Pokemon theories are a lot of fun, right? It's one of the reasons I love this franchise. There's so much there, and yet there is so much room for interpretation that we can come up with really interesting connections that make us look at Pokemon in a whole new light. And I know that theories are why a lot of you are here, and I promise there will be more Poke Studies soon, but today I wanted to do something a little different. A lot of theories are based on, or at least to take evidence from, Pokemon designs, and Pokemon designs happens to be one of my passions. So in this mini-series, if you will, we're going to have a look at theories that I have seen out there. I didn't come up with these theories, they're fairly popular, but we're going to have a look at the design evidence for and against these theories to help us evaluate how likely they are to be true. Welcome to episode 1 of Theories in Design. The first theory we will look at is one of the most popular design theories out there, the connection between Butterfree and Venomoth. People who support this theory point out a number of design elements that seem to cross evolution lines for the final stage, leading to the idea that at some point during the development of Pokemon Red and Blue, Venomoth and Butterfree were swapped for some reason. Superficially, it's easy to see how Butterfree has a lot in common with Venonat, but Venomoth doesn't necessarily look like it belongs with Caterpie and Metapod. But the thing about Generation 1 Pokemon in particular is that they changed a lot during development. I mean, this is what Scyther was originally going to look like. And even after the games were released, many designs have changed, like Kakuna's arms or Charmander's spike. So if we're going to pass judgment on this theory, we're going to have to look at the oldest artwork we can find, and we're going to have to look deeper. First, let's compare Venonat and Butterfree since those similarities are pretty obvious. They share a purple body, and they both have the big red compound eyes, although it is notable how Venonat's eyes have the dots in them, but Butterfree's don't. They also have the same hands, and their feet are both long ovals. The only difference is that Venonat's feet split into 2 toes. Their antenna and mouth also share largely the same shape, with Butterfree's mandibles being a little smaller. Overall, they are very close, and the little differences are nothing out of the ordinary. The interesting thing is that Butterfree doesn't share any of these features with its pre-evolutions. Venomoth does have a similar mouth to Venonat, but that's about it. And I find it very peculiar that Venomoth's mandibles are actually missing from its red, blue, and green sprites. They're there in the early artwork, but we know that many, if not most, of the Gen 1 Pokemon were actually designed as sprites. The official art came later. So the Venomoth sprites from the Japanese Red and Blue are actually the oldest artwork we know of. Now, if we look at the inspirations behind Butterfree and Venonat, there's no connection there. Butterfree is clearly a butterfly, it looks a lot like a black-veined white, but Venonat is definitely not a caterpillar. It's not even a gnat, like its name implies. It's probably more of a mite. So there, Butterfree seems to fit with Caterpie and Metapod. But Caterpie and Metapod are very clearly based on the caterpillars and pupae of swallowtail butterflies. And Butterfree is not a swallowtail. Not only is the black-veined white from a different family of butterflies entirely, but Butterfree doesn't have the defining feature of swallowtail butterflies, which Venomoth does have. It's the long bits on the lower wings, the swallowtails. Design-wise, the evidence to link Venomoth to Caterpie and Metapod is very weak. The usual diagram of this theory does show some similarities in the eyes, the segmented body, and the head spikes, but I don't find this convincing because the similarities aren't very strong. But I do find the swallowtail evidence here very convincing, and the design evidence for Venonat and Butterfree should be enough to overcome anyone's doubts. Some people have pointed to the Pokemon Index order as evidence against this theory because it shows that Venonat was added to the games way before any of the others, and the entire Caterpie family was added at once. If you want to know more about the index order, I suggest you check out the Helix Chamber, links in the doobly-doo. But because we know that Pokemon have been redesigned after being added to the games, like Scyther, the index order tells us that the Caterpie family was conceptualized as a family, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the designs weren't swapped. So my verdict here is that this theory is probably true. Another theory of swap designs is between Gyarados and Dragonite. This one is less popular, but I've seen it from multiple sources. It's the same idea as before, that Gyarados was originally the evolution of Dragonair, since they are both blue serpentine dragons, and that Dragonite was supposed to evolve from Magikarp, since the colors are similar, and Dragonite is a more classic dragon, fitting with the legend that Magikarp is based on. But there we already find a problem with this theory. Dragonite is a classic Western dragon with arms, legs, and wings. But the legend about the carp that jumps up a waterfall and becomes a dragon is Chinese, so it would make sense for Magikarp to evolve into a Chinese dragon, which are more serpentine, have no wings, and often no arms or legs either, like Gyarados. But let's keep looking. In this case, the index order tells us that these Pokemon were all implemented separately, except for Dratini and Dragonair that were together. And it is true that Dragonite shares very little with Dratini and Dragonair. If you've seen my video on the worst designs of Generation 1, you've seen me criticize this before. It goes from no limbs to 6, a smooth belly to a segmented one, although interesting to note, Dratini did have a segmented belly in the early sprites. And the crystal balls and wing-shaped ears from Dragonair are exchanged for a pair of antennae. And you know what? Those antennae do look like Magikarp whiskers, and Magikarp has a segmented body. But that's where the similarities end. Comparing Dragonair to Gyarados, you find even less. Besides their colors and their body shapes, there's nothing to connect them. But you do see significant connections between Magikarp and Gyarados, way more than with Dragonite. And again, I've talked about this before in the best designs of Generation 1. They share the same mouth, the same fins, and they also have the same whiskers and segmented body. We did recently see an earlier incarnation of Gyarados that basically had none of these features. But back when Gyarados looked like this, evolution wasn't even a thing in Pokemon yet. Magikarp was introduced much later, and although we don't know whether Gyarados was reworked before or after this, it's clear that ultimately they were designed to be a unit. If you look at these two more abstractly, you can clearly see they share the same design philosophy. Their designs are jagged, they're full of sharp edges. And Dragonite and Dragonair actually show cohesion in this sense too. They are much smoother, softer designs. So my verdict here is no. The evidence in favor of this theory is very weak, and the evidence against it is overwhelming. Which doesn't mean Dragonite was ever a good design. Thank you so much for watching this first episode of this mini-series. On next week's episode, we will discuss what exactly is Cubone. Before anything else, let me know in the comments whether you agree with my verdict on today's theories. You can also let me know if there are any other theories that could use a similar treatment. The Cubone theory is the only other one that I have planned, but if you can think of other theories, especially ones that don't involve Gen 1 Pokemon, I will very gladly do more. Once you're done down in the comments, don't forget to like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Likes, shares, and comments are all very important to YouTube, so you'll be really helping me out. And if you're new here, subscribe to my channel for more Pokemon content every Friday, and sometimes more. I'm Umbreon Libris, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Some Pokemon.
Pika, Pika, Pika.
You're adorable.
You're adorable.